Hello, good evening. Thank you so much for coming to the Sashiko Live Streaming. This is Atsushi. And this is the live streaming where I talk about Sashiko while doing the Sashiko stitching. And this is not it is not a lecture, it is not a webinar, it is not a tutorial, so there will not be anything happening much. I'm gonna be just stitching over the camera. And I don't want to make it like a tutorial, so please do not ask the technical questions. Those questions are already answered on the videos on my YouTube. So let's focus on some cultural stories. And I will be doing some Sashiko stitching probably for 1 hour or so today. And we'll talk about something related to Sashiko. And today I have two announcements. One announcement is that I will be having just a second. I will be having the talk about cultural appropriation versus appreciation as a part of the series of this topic. And it's going to be Saturday, this coming Saturday, September 9th, starting 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And there's a link on my description area to register that. So that'd be great if you can join that. It's going to be my officially first time to talk about this topic as a conversation or talk. So she will ask me questions and I'm trying to answer that. And I kind of realized that I don't think I have enough time to answer all of the questions. And I would like to make sure that I can answer some of the questions from the audience. So I decided to offer some of the follow-up after that, which is going to be like this. Oops. And there's also, it's going to be a Zoom session. And anybody can ask me a question about that topic. And also that's that requires registration on the Zoom. So not the same, but the link to that follow-up is also on the description. So that'd be great if you can check that. Okay, that's about it. So I will start stitching. Hello, hello, hello. Good evening, everybody. It is going to be very interesting conversation, like talk on Saturday. I have talked about it a lot, the same topic, and I have also shared the most important message that I have for the cultural appropriation, which you probably know already. Don't worry about it too much. But it's not in the context of somebody asking me a question and answering that. So the question was really good. The list of questions I received was really good. And I'm preparing to answer that. And I probably, I hope I can do right, like a Q&A like document and share it somewhere, probably on the Patreon mostly. But I'm preparing that, and it's going to be quite interesting, and I hope I can make it short, which I have only 1 hour to talk about. So let's see. But it's going to be quite fun time to do that. I don't want to do this. Just a second, okay? I did not prepare well today. I don't want to do this. This is okay. I don't want to do this too. So many fabric. I usually get a really kind of emotional reaction when I even use the word cultural appropriation. I don't even talk about it. Whenever I use the word, some of the people there expect me to say specific things, even if I'm not saying that. So without them watching what I say or reading what I write, they jump to the conclusion saying like, well, it's not, that there's not no such a thing as cultural appropriation. And that's my point. I don't really have enough experience to talk about that issue from my own experience, because I was actually the privileged side when I was in Japan, and it is very new to me. And that's something I have to balance it too, because most of the talk, it's a series offered by the Japanese. Sorry, it's here. Just a second. Too small to read, so let me. It's Twin Cities JACL. What does JACL stand for? Let me check. Japanese American Citizen League. So it is sponsored and offered by the Twin City, I think it's in Minnesota. And JACL means Japanese American Citizen League. So for that, I am not a Japanese American. I'm, Japanese. There's no element of American besides I am the immigrant to the US. So I might not be the main category of the people they interview. But because of the trend in Sashiko, and I sometimes experience the kind of difficulties. But in general, I still feel like the culture is not something we can appropriate. So that's my base point, and then I will talk about how to make a bridge between the appropriation and appreciation if I feel it's okay to do so. And that's going to be the main topic. So, the key is to bridge the appropriation to the appreciation. And I hope that I can offer one of those. Where's the boundaries? What is good and what is bad? And there's not that much stuff that it's bad. So for that matter, probably I still am learning what it means. What I'm trying to fight back, which I will probably focus on Saturday a lot, is the simplification. That's what I'm fighting against. The Sashiko introduced in English is quite... I often say that Sashiko introduced in English is not wrong, but insufficient. It is not a whole, it's not enough, it's not explained enough, it's not introduced enough. And one word to describe that condition or situation is the simplification. I think I started using that word recently. But it is very much simplified for the purpose of the profit. They want to make profit as the result. They really simplified to... if it's complex, it's kind of difficult to teach. One has to be the master within like certain times, and if it's complex, it's kind of difficult to master that. And it is always good to say that one knows everything, which is not gonna be true. But a lot of things are simplified, and that's the issue I am experiencing. That so that's gonna be another line focused on the Saturday's talk. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting. I'm a little nervous. I'm preparing. I'm not gonna read the script, but I am preparing something like that. And let's see. But I hope that it's gonna be one answer, which I have been sharing already here and there on the YouTube. When I get a question on the live streaming like that, I usually answer that. And long story short, if you're worried about it, don't worry about it too much. If you're not worried about it, please start worrying about it. And that's my stand. So I don't know if I can make it that simple, but it's gonna be like a series of stories that I have to, not have to, I like to make it comprehensive instead of like a here and there. How do you keep each stitch is the same size? This sounds like a very philosophical, but because I don't. And that's another thing that Sashiko introduced in English. Many people teach. I took one workshop online that was for free, but somebody teaching Sashiko, but they say like, try to keep the same length of the stitches, and it's okay to not to be perfect, embrace the imperfection. Those are not really talking about Sashiko at all. They are misunderstanding what Sashiko is. And even stitches are kind of, yes, it is the key. It is very important part of Sashiko, but how to make the stitches even is already missing a very important part of Sashiko. So the question, how do I keep each stitches so even or same size, is because I'm not trying to do it. I know this is really not the answer many people are looking for. So that's the time I teach. That's the question that I have to teach to make them enabled to do it so they can actually experience that. And that's the online class, that's the in-person workshop. And I'm not trying to be mean or stingy for that. It's just, and it's not only me, it's not only us who think that way. There are many people who do that. And many people took my workshop and they are probably have that exactly same questions. But they do have exactly same answers too. But yeah, it's really sad that for some reason that Sashiko has become the way to embrace the imperfection. That's not really true. There is a book saying like embrace the imperfection on the title, or I don't know, the front cover, I believe. That is completely misleading. I don't know any artisans who say or who told us that we should embrace the imperfection. I mean, it is imperfect. Don't get me wrong. It is imperfect because it's all hand stitched. But embracing it is completely different from what I have received. So, well, somebody probably said it that, it is hand stitching, it is easy, it is just stitching. So, not many people can have a good result. So they probably start saying like, it's okay, it's the hand stitching, so we can embrace the imperfection. No. We can embrace a lot of different things, but not the imperfection. It will be imperfect, by the way, though. It sounds quite philosophical, but that's the way it is. And that's the way it's not covered, unfortunately. Not unfortunately, it's not okay. That's something I have to change. I will speak up about those things. And also, there's like a this may be from the Domestica course, and I really wish that they will try, but I no, probably that's from my student from Domestica or someone else. I've heard that is that okay? Like I am using the different needles from. I do have a very specific recommendation for the needles, and I explain why I recommend that needle and the thread. And but there was some comments that I am using the needles, different needles with the big eyes, because it is difficult for them to thread the needle. And it is kind of challenging to thread the needles until you get used to that. But I don't want them to make excuse and avoid, I mean, go to the kind of easy option with ignoring what the story is about. And I hope that no teachers are teaching like you should get the bigger eyes so that you can thread easier. Well, that's also the part of learning to thread the needle. There's nothing wrong with using the threaders. There's nothing wrong with using, I don't know, like some other tools until you feel comfortable. But changing the tool because one cannot do it is quite, and it is okay to do that if that's not the word from the teacher. If the student, if the just the stitcher decided to use the bigger eyes of the needle, that's actually perfectly fine. Go ahead. They have all freedom to do it. But the teacher saying that is a completely different story. The teachers are supposed to explain why these needles are used, why these threads are used, and then encourage the students to be able to thread it instead of introducing easy option. So yeah, it's gonna be a long process to undo those simplification. Because we like it simple, we like it easy, we don't like the truth sometimes. And I don't think the process itself is not a cultural appropriation, it's more like a simplification, right? If there's any word for that, I would like to learn here too. Like simplify it. Like how can we make what do we call to the kind of phenomena somebody is simplifying or minimizing the culture to get a profit out of it? What is the word for that action? What is going to be a good example? It might be a quite strange example, but let's say that I would like to bring the hamburger to the Japan, and then they don't know what hamburger is. And I decided to bring just Burger King to Japan, and then I ignored the other hamburger chains like McDonald's or Wendy's or you name it. You should have you have your favorite, but because nobody is aware of those things, not many of my students, my clients, my customers do not have ability to research what's happening in outside of that country. They believe that the Burger King is the only burgers they can get in this whole world. And for me, it is much easier to sell the burger because it's just one chain. Yet I am not really explaining the whole culture. Yet I am promoting myself as I know everything about the burger or fast food. And then that's a really kind of silly example, but that's something I'm kind of feeling what's happening to Sashiko right now. Bar cooking itself has no issues, and what is introduced in the US when English is not wrong at all. It's a good Sashiko when it is introduced as one specific Sashiko, but it's not. There are tons of Sashiko which has been forgotten, and if it's not on purpose, I understand it, but unfortunately, it's not on. It is on purpose. You could say they are dumbing down Sashiko. They are, but you shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say that. I could say it, but I shouldn't say it. Okay, that's a very nice advice. Well, no, simplification is still better, I guess. Simplification is okay. Probably that's what it is. Again, I shouldn't say it, I understand that. It's really sad, though. And it's kind of scary, though. Like, what if I don't speak English? Right? Like, what if I did not decide to come to the US to avoid my fate to be the Sashiko Stitcher? I wouldn't be able to speak English like this, and I wouldn't be able to get out from Japan. So I would be just stitching in Japan, and I wouldn't understand, or I wouldn't even realize what is happening. And the Sashiko I practice will be buried in the histories, technically speaking. So who choose what to be left, what to be in the future will be somebody who speaks English, not somebody who actually practices Sashiko in Japan. That's the scary part of this. When it comes to the culture, I believe that people who practice that culture should be the main resource and main people who dance. But right now in the society, people who can convey the message somehow is more important than actually who practice. So for this case, I may have more power than actual stitchers, and I don't like it. I don't like it. Therefore, I teach, and therefore I offer some gathering online, and therefore I stitch. It's my kind of assignment for me to do every week. I stitch outside of this live streaming, but it is important for me that I keep stitching no matter what. I have had conversations with 2 other artisans, one from Nigeria and one Native American, about the cultural appropriation, and they also have concerns about what they see as appropriation of their culture. Interesting. I have had a conversation with 2 other artisans. So it's kind of you helping me out for the Saturday. How do you define that? I have to define, right? Like, technically speaking, when I am invited to the discussion in English, I should and will have to, or should be able to define the word we're going to discuss. And I understand appreciation. I understand. I think I can define appreciation and cultural appreciation. How do you define cultural appropriation? And there's a YouTube videos, like I think it's a TED Talk, and I am trying to watch that, which I have not done that yet, but like you may have other friends around who are from different culture. Like Leah said, there might be some of the friends, and you may have somebody who can talk about those things. How do they, or even how do you define? I'm kind of throwing the most difficult part of the discussion to you, but I have to. I not have to. I would like to. I'd like to come up with that while preparing for the talk. For me, cultural simplification itself is part of the cultural appropriation. I guess. Is it? Maybe. Maybe not. I mean, we can probably Google it, and then we can have a discuss. I mean, the definitions from the other issues. But in the context of Sashiko or the something you practice or something you hear, how do you, not like, the sociologist or anthropologist, they can define the word from their research or from the academic perspective, and they are very important. At the same time, what I like to learn is more like what we, like ordinary people, think or feel from that. I get a lot of definition from others who think that I am accusing them based on the cultural appropriation because I only because I use the word without reading what I write or without watching the videos. And their definition is quite simple, that the cultural appropriation doesn't exist. There's no such a thing as appropriating the culture. And I kind of get that because I'm from that. Like 10, 15 years ago, ask me the same question and I will answer the way they do. I am still learning and I'm still very, very much the beginning of the stage of learning. So it's difficult, but it's very important. It's important for the future, not for me, not for. You're the Sashiko protector, Sashiko warrior. Was it somebody here said I'm the Sashiko samurai? And I probably said, don't call me that. And there's a reason I don't consider myself as samurai, like samurai of Sashiko. And I can explain the reason later, but last warrior, no, not last, the warrior is quite. Am I fighting? Well, I am fighting, yes. I used to say no to those words, but I think I am fighting right now. So yes. Somebody call me gatekeeper, which I don't really think that I'm keeping the gate. I'm kind of destroying the gate for that matter. I'm not really the traditional side for that. I don't have to probably verbalize this, but please do call your stitching Sashiko if you're here. I mean, you don't have to, of course, but you don't have to worry about like appropriating the culture because you are here to learn. You're here to acknowledge the stories behind it. That's all I ask. Appropriation is taking without appreciation. Very good. That's a very good definition. I will use that too. That can link to many things that I'm going to talk about. The hamburger analogy could be you introducing the Burger King as the ultimate burger, but what you'd be missing is hamburger culture completely unrelated to the fast food background barbecue family. Yep. So I thought that was a silly example, but it might be actually getting the point. It is. And what in that analogy, the hamburger analogy, what people want in Japan is just a tasty hamburger. They don't want to learn the history. They don't want to learn that background. They don't want to hear that there are other possibly the best hamburgers outside of Japan. They don't want to know that. They don't want to know that. And that's fine. That's fine. That's fine that they don't want to know that. Here in English, if they want to only know one type of sashiko, that is perfectly fine. Because that's how culture changes. That's how we choose the culture. However, when one introducing that culture, one claim that they are the professional teachers or, who introduce the culture, simplify it based on their preference, profit, convenience, whatever reason that they choose to simplify it, then that's going to be the issue. It's not fair. If the whole world, not whole world, if the world acknowledged our Sashiko story and then they decided to not to practice it, then there's nothing I can do, nothing I want to do for that matter. I will follow the change. But I think it's completely wrong because otherwise I wouldn't get this much followers and I wouldn't have met you. The world's a little more decent than we think. Not a little more. No, not a little more. I believe that this world is decent. We just don't have enough information. We focus on speed too much that we tend to forget stories, the full stories. So when we know it, when we acknowledge it, we can act. That's what everybody's doing around me right now. You're here to listen to me. You're here to learn more. If 100% people say I don't care about it, then that's the way it is. But I know many people cares about those stories, and there are those who intentionally ignore those stories to keep their keep their profit, I guess. And friends together, and then the friends together regional toppings and buns extra. But they think fast food hamburgers are real hamburgers. Yeah. Well, if I say yes, it sounds like that the sashiko introduced in English right now is like a fast food, which may not be that far from the truth. That's very, yeah. So one can really simplify the culture, and it happens. It happens especially when we move the culture from one region to another region in different language. It happens. And it's not a matter of good or bad. It just becomes the matter of good or bad when the intention involves in that change. And if once it's for the money, I don't think it's bad. It's just one strategy. That's why I don't really worry about big brand using the Sashiko as the word. Many people worry about that's the cultural appropriation, and I think, nah, they think it's okay because they're just making money. I mean, I don't like it much, but they're not gonna change the culture. They are gonna move on. That's the trend. So they are gonna move on. So, Susan, so hamburgers abroad equals Sashiko in the US. That's a little scary conclusion, but I'm glad that I could offer some nice analogy to be on the same page. But yeah, that's the simplified version of understanding each other. Appropriation is taking a glass without the privilege inside. Whoa. Yeah, I have to think about that. Stephanie, thank you. Cultural appropriation is a valid concern, but when it gets too focused on the microscopic level, I think it can also detract from others wanting to admire and learn about the culture. Yes, I completely agree with you, Stephanie. And that's why I'm not saying like, if I start saying like, don't please call you stitching Sashiko because you're not Japanese, claim it. Claim it here that you never told me that. So the problem though is the one culture cannot be taught or represented or summarized by the people who don't have that culture and then spread the information throughout. So that's that conclusion, that statement Stephanie gave right now lead me to make a video about cultural appropriation in Sashiko, which I say that it does not exist when under one condition. Under one condition, it does not exist and it does not bother me, which is the acknowledgement. When one acknowledge that, when they acknowledge that they are more than what is introduced, then it's okay. Not knowing itself is, it's not a matter of good or bad. Not knowing, like ignorance itself, is not a matter of good or bad. Intentional ignorance is the bad thing. Or it's not even bad, it's the issue. And there are surprisingly a lot of people who intentionally ignore this, intentionally not acknowledge, because that's going to destroy some of their statement. Some of the statement they make is completely contradictory to what it is. One is they embrace the imperfection. If they make their brand saying like embrace the imperfection, then they cannot take it back. As the result, they have to twist the reality. So let's say that they, I hope it's not gonna be somebody specific, but if they, let's say, publish a book saying like embrace the imperfection, they cannot take it back because it's published. And they define Sashiko as the imperfection, embracing, stitching, embracing the imperfection. That can be right, but in my Sashiko, that's a completely wrong sentence. So they have to ignore what I'm saying. And they do. So that's the point that it should start. You may wonder, how do you know that they ignore? There's some, there are some signs or some, like, I don't want to say proof, but there's some, there's a reason I say that. I remember seeing a Santa Fe restaurant in Bangkok. Santa Fe is everywhere. I think it's in Japan too. Santa Fe. I don't know what they sell though. What do they sell in Santa Fe? Well, the word in English, like hibachi, is not the barbecue in Japan, like barbecue on the iron board. Like when you heard the word hibachi, probably you imagine that Asian chef cooking in front of the iron plate, doing those onion volcanoes. You pick proteins from chicken, beef, and they make stir fries. That's hibachi in English, or in the US for that matter, I guess. There's, in general, hibachi in Japan is completely different thing. Also, I probably said it so many times already by now in this live streaming. Futon in Japan is completely different from futon in the US. That's probably the first culture shock many Japanese people experience. When they want to purchase futon, in their long understanding, they have to go somewhere else. So a lot of things changes, and that's perfectly fine. Change itself is fine, but we have to acknowledge that. Okay, let's go back to Leah's deep comment. So, appropriation is taking a glass without the beverage inside. So the beverage itself is the stories. Do I understand correctly? And let's say that I have a green tea in my glass. And then the glass says that outside it's green tea. And somebody come and take that bottle, then kind of empty it, and then pour something else, but the label outside of the glass says green tea. Well, then they can call it green tea. But that's changing completely the culture itself. So it's somewhere between that. when they think I don't stage, I'm sorry. I cannot stage when I think this much. That is really deep. I would like to keep thinking that. We like to Americanize things to suit our taste. It is, and I don't think that's a wrong thing. I don't really think that it's a wrong thing at all. Like, Americanized sushi, I don't know any Japanese who are upset about American sushi. Because we know that it's different thing. And probably American sushi chef knows the difference and they never say that this is the sushi in Japan too. So America took the culture of sushi and then apply it to their own society, and now it became completely different food. And I think it's a nice, healthy change. I don't know if it's healthy, but that's okay change. I like both. I make both. But there's not a simplification there. At least if they're gonna simplify it, they know they will. The information is available there. But I think Sashiko is not only one of those who actually got erased from the history or story because of that. So she's kind of too big to erase from the one's history. But there must be some other things. For instance, what we call Mexican food is really not what you would be served in Mexico. Yeah. At the same time, I know it's not. I understand that it's not a best thing to do, but we know, like even I know that a Mexican food in the US is not the same as in Mexico. So if somebody is teaching how to make Mexican food, like authentic Mexican food based on the experience in working in the American Mexican restaurant, then that might be a little bit the issue. But when we have enough information, we can be quite decent. The issue in Sashiko is that there are not that much information left. Like the more I share the stories, the more I realize I am the first one who can do this, who is doing this. They're not. Well, it explains a lot. It makes a lot of sense. But there are no other Japanese who can speak English without translating in their head. I'm speaking out of my head right now. With the decades of experience in Sashiko, probably there is some younger generations of Japanese people who can teach Sashiko, but they don't have decades of experience. So their teaching can be quite. I'm not saying their teaching is wrong. Their teaching is quite specific, as my teaching is also specific, but they don't know enough to teach the whole. So, and those who can teach the whole are not English speaker who I have to really bring them up to the stage somehow. So after being in Japan though, Leah, after being in Japan though, I realized what I have missed having American sushi. Japanese was so much better. Welcome to Japan, and I'm so glad that you experienced that. So one has to experience both. Okay, if you keep eating the Japanese sushi only, you will miss American sushi. Trust me, I have done that. After 4 years of studying in the US, I went back to Japan, and I was in Japan. I was in Tokyo for 2 years, and toward then I was really missing the American sushi. And back then there were not that many restaurants who was serving the gozero roll or those spider rolls. So I really remember. I remember that I missed so much. Of the glass example, not example, glass analogy. Put the sugar or soda water in it to the glass which has a green tea label. Can it be that different though? I don't think what's happening right now is that significant. It's more subtle. If it's really much like, the glass with saying green tea, empty it and put the cola, like Coca-Cola, it's really obvious. Well, probably it's that obvious. It may be that obvious. It seems that your issue is with Western Sashiko teachers who claim they teach the true or ultimate Sashiko. They are teaching an extract of Sashiko. Yes. And if I may add, extract something based on their preference or convenience, not by nature. So for example, they don't teach how to make stitches even by teaching the other forms, like, how to form. Form is the key to make it even, which I don't plan to make it even. It happens to be even. But instead of teaching the form, which they don't know, they say that embracing the imperfection. That's the key of Sashiko, which is not the key. So they are kind of extracting something that they like, not what it is. And that's the issue. If they extract nicely, with specifying that I'm extracting it, I think I wouldn't be frustrated this much. So I don't mind, like, for example, I have met somebody who were in the textile, I think she was in textile school. Oh no, she was probably teaching art in school, and she had a class talking about the textile in all over the world, and she asked me if it's okay for her to talk about Sashiko and share some of the examples and some photos. And she was very much worried about if it's going to be cultural appropriation. I said, no, it's not really appropriation at all. It's actually appreciation, because you're introducing that to the other people. So, as I keep saying, like everywhere, there are two kinds of teaching. One is a guide, like a navigators, like teachers in the elementary schools, middle schools. Like, I cannot thank enough for them right now as the father of 8 years old. But they are a guide. So their job is to introduce as many topics as they can so that a student can experience it. In those guiding teachers, I want them to actually teach Sashiko with as much as with the best information, best experience they have. I hopefully that they would mention somebody Japanese who they learned Sashiko from, but it's not even necessary because they will never claim themselves as the teacher. The second teaching is the professor kind of thing, like the math professor in higher education who is specialized in one thing, who can claim that they are the expert, they know everything about that field. I don't think, the teachers I am talking here as the issue is those who think they are the professors. They mastered Sashiko enough to teach to others. That's not a truth. That's what I mean about you being the protector. Yes, I'm realizing it. That's why my words are getting a little more direct. The more I share, the more I feel like, well, I have to speak up. I do really have to speak up. It's gonna take some time. And it might not be as pleasant as I thought, but somebody has to do it. And that's why I don't mind repeating the same stories over and over again. Because my goal is to, deliver that message. Well, so you may wonder, how do you define the professional, professors? Well, I don't know. I don't know how good they are. So you may say that my judgment might be wrong. Maybe I'm wrong for that. But if one claims that he or she is the expert in one practice in one specific culture, they have to be able to speak that language. Otherwise, it's impossible. Like, how can they be the master without talking to the Japanese who practice that? That's just, they're learning, let's say Sashiko, they're learning Sashiko from somebody's writing, somebody's translation of somebody's interpretation. That's too far from the first source of information. Yet they don't even say where it comes from, right? If they kind of specify where the information comes from, I think it's understandable. Unless they say they know everything about the other Sashiko as well. But that's gonna be the kind of main topic of tomorrow, Saturday's conversation. I don't know if it's under the category of cultural appropriation, but this is my honest feedback to the world phenomena of cultural appropriation. I don't know if it is called cultural appropriation or not. So that's not me who judge it, who decided. It might be completely different thing, but it's not that far from it in my understanding. If I have to use a different wording, it might be cultural simplification, or we have to think about it too. But and as you can tell, me just mumbling, thanks to you, with answering your question, can take 1 hour, right? So, and on Saturday, there are people who are new to me at all. Like, they don't know me at all. Some of them don't know me at all. So the interviewer will ask me to talk about myself a little bit, which I will try to make it short, but at the same time, it is 1 hour as a total. So I don't know if I can explain. When I think I can, I try my best to complete the stories or my statement or my, you know, my replies within that hour. But I don't know if we have enough time to answer the questions from the, from those who had my who had my talk. Therefore, I have the follow-up sessions, which is not related to the JACL at all. So it's really purely my Zoom account, the same platform that I sometimes do as the Sashiko gathering, online gathering. You can show your face if you want to. You don't have to show your face. You can just listen to that. I'll be showing my face so you can answer me the question directly, or you can write the questions and I will answer that. It's like the, live streaming that I can see your face. But I will focus on the questions and answering to the topic. So that is happening on the Saturday, this coming Saturday, September 9th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. It might be a little earlier for some of the people in the West Coast. I'm sorry for the European people in Europe. It's going to be very late. I believe that we can upload the recording unless I say something really inappropriate. So if you would like to join that talk, please check the description for this YouTube, and there are two links. One is for my Zoom follow-up and one is for the JACL talk, and you will receive the link. And you can also find that link from my Instagram and story highlight. To me, if you just focus on the stitching, you miss the rich history behind it. It is so much more. It is the stories, the fabric, the why it developed the way. Yep. And that is what it is. What is missing. That's why I'm speaking up. It is beautiful that Sashiko can help the future. But some of the people who like Sashiko are focusing on the future too much. How Sashiko can save the environment, how Sashiko can be the art. Those are great, and I'm not going to deny it. That'd be great. But at the same time, they cannot detach it from the history. Helen, thank you so much. Wow, it's 10 o'clock already. Oops. I will have to go too, but I cannot stop until I finish this much thread. So let me have another 10 minutes or so. Thank you, Helen. But the history stories comes from the experience, or sometimes listening, and it's missing a lot. There are tons of stories are lost already. Unfortunately, there are many stories are lost because they're old, and some of them are gone. And when we were in Japan, we had a pleasure. Like, it's actually not a pleasure; it's an honor to meet some of the teachers in Japan, but they are quite old, and their stories are kind of difficult to translate. So somebody had to. It's like 20 years ago. I wish somebody spend or write a grant proposal to get money to record everything on the documents. But at the same time, understand how difficult it could be because Sashiko is too ordinary for us to make a document out of. So it would be great to do it, but at the same time, it's kind of impossible to do it because if we focus on the people who don't mind leaving the stories behind, we may lose the important part of Sashiko too. So it's already filtered. I'm extremely privileged because I had to listen to those stories. Do those people share their stories to others? No. They hate to be in public. I was inside like inner circle throughout my life, and I had to be there. I had no choice. As the result, I have like tons of stories to share. But their stories will not be on book if some like a sociologist come to ask them to talk about Sashiko because they don't want to talk about those things. It's really, really personal. It's very inner circle. It's not prepared for outside, which I am kind of disclosing. So it's well, it's my story now. But I believe that it's very, very, very important to share. And they don't mind it. It meant to be like this. I love this weekly hour as I get the best of learning more. I love this weekly hour as I get the best of learning more Sashiko stories and get watch you stitch beautiful Sashiko. Thank you. I hope that I can do different patterns at some point. If you're new, you've been seeing this pattern already, but soon. I don't know. Like soon is a little bit different thing, but okay. Thread is almost gone. Yep, thread is almost gone. So I probably explained that the goal of this. It's gonna be done in this year, hopefully. This much. I will keep stitching until it goes to the 100-meter. Okay. I appreciate you coming to this live streaming. Thank you so much. If you could click the good button, that'd be very much helpful for me to keep doing, to keep the health of this channel. And again, please register. And the link for the registration for the talk is on the description area. If not, please come to the Instagram or actually I have somewhere else too. What else? That's about it, I guess. Well, I will have the Japanese live streaming tomorrow. And I hope you have a good night then. I will see you this same time on Thursday next week. It's gonna be like a summary of what I did, what I will do on Saturday. Have a good night. Bye-bye.